Matt Willoughby with Civitas Institute joins us. Matt, the governor's pretty clear. They pass a budget that looks anything like the Senate proposal. She's going to veto it. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, oh yeah, I think that's going to happen. What the Senate came out was a little different from the House budget, a little bit different. And they actually spelled out the tax cuts. You remember in the House budget, you had a line called reserved for finance. It was a tax cut package with no details, and they set aside $230 million in the first year of the biennium and $404 or $405 million in the second year, but we didn't know how they were going to get there. But the Senate spells out. They do an across-the-board personal income tax cut, and that's a little over $186 million each year. And plus some other deductions, some other tax cuts in there, and they call it their job creation package. And Senator Ruccio, during a press conference, was mentioning a UNC study seemed to indicate there'd be a creation of 20,000 jobs in the immediate future, and maybe 50 to 60,000 over a span of time with this tax cut package. Now, while they didn't cut the corporate tax, that is still a possibility since the House didn't spell out how they would cut their taxes. They could still come up with a corporate tax cut. So that's still out, and we both know probably what's going to happen is the Senate's going to send it back over to or send it to the House. The House won't concur. It'll go into a conference, and you'll come out with a final version that the governor will veto. And then you're going to have a continuing resolution. And if you remember, they already sent her one that she vetoed anyway. So we may be headed for a stalemate.
What's the climate down here? You've been here many a year. Mm-hmm. Is it rough down here if you're a lawmaker trying to cut a deal?
I think it is, yeah. When you have a Republican-controlled legislature and a Democrat in the governor's mansion, you've seen it already. It's tense. Do you want to build a veto-proof support for a bill, or do you want to force her to veto? And so you can use that to run against her in 2012.
Most pundits and most lawmakers are focusing on education funding, not the small or the 0.5% income tax reduction.
Yeah,
what do you make of the education funding in this budget?
Well, the Senate spends a little bit more on public schools and universities, cuts a little bit on the community colleges. Now the Democrats are saying that the senators are cutting teacher assistants. That's a little misleading in that what they're doing is they're funding it at the level of kindergarten classes and giving LEAs, the local districts, the flexibility to still fund other teacher assistant positions with some other funds. It's just that they're basing the funding for teacher assistants on a smaller group. So that's the big thing I think that the governor is going to pick on when she comes up with a reason to veto.
But the school has to use local money if it wants to maintain its ranks of teaching assistants.
They can find
it. The state couldn't outlaw the local government from spending money on that, could they?
Oh, I don't think so. I think they try to give them as much flexibility as, but what they're saying is, here's your target, here's what you're going to do. Now you need to find how you want to do it if you want to do it that way.
Health and Human Services, another agency, another group of the budget that is facing some fundamental reforms. What's your assessment of that? It's a lot of different moving parts here.
Yeah, we'll see where the community care thing goes and how that works out. I mean, some people are saying we're doing something we did, a few years ago that didn't quite work out. We don't know where they're headed with that and how that's going to work out. But I mean, that is such a complicated part when you're dealing with Medicaid and Medicare and all that sort of stuff. It's just way too complicated.
Matt Willoughby, Civitas, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.